how to paint a 3D form with watercolors. I will show you on an acorn painting example. An outline drawing is done, which is available for download. And we have a round subject in front of us. Acorn is a round subject. With an elastic eraser, I'm removing the excess amount of graphite off the paper, so there are no extra graphite marks visible. And now, a little bit of technical drawing. On a plain piece of paper, I would like to show you how the realistic form is being built. It's not about technique, it's not about the subject. It's about the tonal values and how we see them in a reference photo, how they are formed, how we are painting them and representing them. Here I'm dividing an acorn base into sections and writing the tonal values. Halftones, light area, again halftones, shadow area, and this is really the basics. There are more tonal values possible. And the reflected light area, which is very often a neglected area, which makes a big difference when you are including that. Also, the upper part of an acorn is also a round subject and it goes around. So if something is going around, something is going away from our eyesight, we can't have a very crisp edges for the edge line of the round subject. And I'm also dividing the upper cap into sections and very roughly showing you reflected light area, also there it is. Then we have a shadow area, which is the darkest part. Shadow area is the darkest part, not the edge of the round subject. Also on the lower part of this acorn, it also goes around, only lower part, there is also a reflected light area. You can really zoom in closer the reference and you will notice that that little tip at the bottom part is the darker and the little rounder part at the very base of the acorn is a reflected light area which is slightly lighter. This is very important. These are the basics if you want to get a realistic looking painting, no matter in which medium you are working, no matter how are you painting, long or just started. These are the basics to get a realistic painting. I have two prepared acorn line drawings and I will show you very quickly the wrong way of starting a realistic painting, realistic form, and the right way. But first we need to start by mixing watercolors. Taking my watercolor set with my top selection of pigments, and previously I made a tutorial of mixing browns and I'm choosing the most appropriate for the acorn painting. I have two mixes that I really will mix any brown for this acorn that I need. Taking round synthetic brush, starting with transparent yellow, indigo, and Alizarin Crimson. Now more transparent yellow, adjusting pigments, Alizarin Crimson. We already have a brown color, taking a piece of paper, testing, open the reference photo right beside you, so you can really zoom in and take a look at those colors. The second one is Indigo, Alizarin Crimson, more Alizarin Crimson, and we have more reddish brownish color, more warmer, richer color, transparent yellow, Indigo, Alizarin Crimson, more transparent yellow, more Alizarin Crimson, more transparent. These three pigments, and just adjusting the pigment ratio. And now we have a more yellowish brown color. And the second brown color also had a transparent yellow. And the fourth mix, I'm taking Indian yellow, a little bit more of Indian yellow, Ultramarine Blue, and Alizarin Crimson. More Indian yellow, and a little touch of Ultramarine Blue. Checking, and I have another brown mix. Now I will mix the second mix of watercolors slightly the wrong way. What I see very often beginners are doing, they're taking really saturated amount of watercolor pigment. I'm trying to do the same. I also sometimes see that beginners, if they're using tubes, they squeeze out the watercolor pigment straight to the watercolor palette and then mix, and it's like super saturated, super strong watercolor mixes, which will never allow you to paint transparently because you premix so much of the pigment. It's really a waste of pigments, and you will not get the results you are looking for or aiming for. Here I'm mixing the same watercolors that I did in the first mix. I'm just showing you a slightly wrong way. Taking one of the Acorn line drawings, starting with applying water, I will show you the first one the wrong way. Applying water to the base of the acorn and applying these really saturated watercolors. You can see straight away that watercolor is quite strong, and still I'm using quite small amounts sometimes compared to other paintings that I see. They use even much stronger, and then it is hard to navigate and add more layers because we are all about layering. Watercolor is transparent medium, and we need to layer in order to get a rich, vibrant and realistic looking painting. And neglecting the reflected light area, going straight dark from the very edge of the line of the outline and going towards the lightest part and leaving only two tonal values. Darker one, the shadow part, and lighter one, the light area. There are so many tonal values, our eye can see lots of tonal values. We don't need to show them all in our paintings, but there are basics that we need to show in order for our eye to understand that it is something round, that it is something three-dimensional on a flat surface. We can achieve that, but only with tonal values. Also, a mistake beginners do is leaving the lightest part much smaller, or maybe the size that is in the reference, but after some while, after layering, we will cover the part of the light and we can finish with no light area at all. I always say leave the lightest part much bigger than it appears in the reference, in order that after many layers you will have the size that you need for the reference and for the finished painting. Applied another layer of darker colors here, And maybe we have a darker and lighter area which makes us feel that it's something round, but it's not enough information for our eye. It is very small amount of information. I'm very roughly and fast painting, just showing you maybe a little bit exaggerated how are the most common mistakes when painting realistic subject beginners are doing. Neglecting reflected light area, leaving the light area smaller than it appears even in the reference, painting with very dark and saturated watercolor mixes, leaving no space to layer any further. After a few layers, it's very dark, it's very saturated, but it's still not looking realistic. Now let's continue with the second outline drawing. Be sure that your water is clean after mixing watercolors. I have two water glasses for that, one for mixing watercolors and one for applying first watery layers. And as you can see, my watercolors already dried a little bit, so I'm adding a little bit of water. And starting from the darker area, the shadow part, leaving gap for the reflected light area, slowly moving around lighter part and going to the half tones of the left part of this acorn. Also leaving a gap at the very bottom part of this acorn body. And now with a clean and dry brush, I'm pushing watercolors towards the outline, smoothing across around the lighter part with a clean and dry brush. Now my shadow part doesn't look as dark as it is in the reference. That is completely normal. First layers are very transparent. We are just setting the tone for the whole painting. We are building the base for our house, which is acorn in this case. But we need to build a very solid base on which we will be painting further. We can't go straight forward to the main building. We need to build the base, and base is very transparent. And as you can see, with clean and dry brush, I'm smoothing towards the edge line, giving this fluffy and light effect around the edge line, because that is not finishing there. The acorn isn't finishing where we have an edge, an outline. Acorn is a round subject and it goes away from our eyesight, what we can't see. So we need to create the illusion for the eye that something is round and going around and away from our eyesight. We can't do that with the crisp edges. Very smoothly, everything is super light, very transparently and gradually applying watercolors. Painting the very lower tip of this acorn with a fine tip brush. There we can go a little bit darker because we can straight see that that little tip at the bottom part is much darker than the base of the acorn body. While the surface is still a little bit moist, I'm adding another layer to the shadow part of this acorn, carefully avoiding the upper part and still not painting the reflected light area, leaving it light. Applying water to the upper part of the acorn. And also, first, I'm not looking at details at each section separately. I'm applying a transparent watercolor layer, also placing tonal values into places. I'm thinking about the form, not the each individual, their detail of that upper part. I'm thinking about the base, the color that is more beyond those details. We can see from the reference that the upper part of the acorn and lower part of the acorn are two different brown colors. Also take that into consideration. Make those brown different. They're not the same color. In realistic watercolor painting, it's important to really study the reference photo. Open it right beside the tutorial. Zoom in each section that you are painting. Look for the details, look for the tonal values. Really explore. If I will add a reference photo inside the tutorial screen, you will not be able to see those details. In realistic painting, everything is important. Adding Ultramarine Blue to my color palette. Alizarin Crimson. So I get a slightly brownish grayish color for the upper tip, the little stem of this acorn. It's more of violetish looking black, but there are violets and browns in there. We are not using clean black color in painting. It really is too saturated and too vibrant, and it stands out when you are painting straight with the black pigment. There are some cases when you need to use black color, clean black pigment, but I like to mix different pigments like dark blue. You can add Perylene Violet or some reds, add a little bit of browns that you already have, and you will get a dark grayish color, which is much better than clean black pigment. Now let's compare both acorns, the first layer. The second one is very transparent, but we have already more information there. The first one is really already looking quite dark, quite saturated, and with crisp looking edge lines, which we don't need, and it really stops the look of round subject. After first transparent layer, I can still remove extra graphite marks that are visible. In the first case, with the very saturated watercolors, that won't be possible. But be sure before erasing that your paper is completely dry. If it will be slightly moist, then you can damage the paper while erasing some details. We need extra light. We need more light than it is visible in the reference. And now you see the edge line of my second attempt is much lighter, fluffier, rather than the first one with crisp looking edges, which doesn't make the subject round, it makes only flat looking subject. Let's now continue with painting the second attempt. I will leave the first one as it is. I will not continue, but with the second one, let's continue painting acorn and build a realistic looking subject. I'm speeding up the acorn painting process. It is available on my Patreon, links are down below. The whole process of painting this acorn took a little bit more than an hour, from the beginning brush strokes till the finishing touches, with all the explanation needed to understand the process of painting this realistic acorn. I'm adding last details and last layers to this acorn painting. My suggestion for you is to paint a little bit more, add extra layer, add extra detail, push yourself a little bit further. You can also go more into detailing of that cap area. That is up to you. Always paint some extra 20-30 minutes longer after finishing my tutorial. You will only benefit, you will work individually, and you will start to understand more, start to see more. The more we look in the reference, the more we start to see. Don't rush things towards the end. If you feel the urge to rush, take a break, come back relaxed with a fresh look, and paint a little bit more. Push yourself a little bit more. I really enjoyed the painting of this acorn and showing you all the things, how to create a realistic painting. Here I'm adding Ultramarine Blue to the very lightest part. That is the finishing touch, what I do with the lightest area, giving that cooler look to that little spot. Thank you for being here, thank you for painting with me, and see you in my next tutorials. Bye bye!